Most financial advisors follow the industry playbook. Elite advisors choose a different path. I'm Sten Morgan. Welcome to the Elite Financial Advisor Podcast, where top advisors share the strategies, mindsets, and the stories behind building a better business, adding more value, and the courage to grow through resistance. Because becoming an elite advisor is not about working harder and longer. It's about choosing a better path. What does it look like to, as quickly as possible, have some type of conversation or process in place to where a business owner would perceive me as different than most average advisors?
The very best have a crystal clear understanding of who their ideal client is, and then they go play in traffic where those people are. Action, like take a step today and a step tomorrow. You can crawl, walk, run into this thing. You're not going to be an expert overnight, but you all know better than anyone, compounding is the eighth wonder of the world.
Technology has to be involved, but I'm like, that's a 3-step process to where your business owner client is like, oh, we've never had this kind of meeting before. Oh, what's the software we're using to analyze it? Oh, you have very specific insights that make you appear like an expert faster than you could on your own. Welcome to this episode. We are hanging out with Jason early today. Jason helped found RISR. RISR is a really cool technology that helps advisors interact with business owners. So in this episode, I want to challenge you. How can you start serving business owners better? There's a good chance you have a business owner in your book, not intentionally maybe, but by accident. And if your service model to that business owner is the same as your retirees, your young working entrepreneurs, you're probably missing something. And so as I talk to Jason today, how can you start serving your business owners differently? So when they do have a liquidity event or something changes in their world, they see you as their advisor still. Let's jump in. Jason, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Sten, great to be here. Appreciate you having me.
You bet. It's good to hear that you've experienced Nashville. Not quite Nashville, I guess Franklin, which is a little different vibe.
Look, I have experienced Nashville a bunch. This was my first time experiencing Franklin. And yeah, like we were talking about just before lunch here, I was blown away. I joked, so we had our whole team down there for a retreat and an offsite, and we were walking around downtown, and I said, "This is it. We're all moving here. So pack your bags. This is where we're moving."
Yes.
So yeah, what a great town.
Yeah, no, it's been great for me and my business for sure. Moving here, I think it's hard to break in sometimes to like established old money in places, but there was just so much new growth and in the Nashville, Franklin area that it's definitely worked out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Well, catch me up. I know for RISR, everybody listening, a bunch of financial advisors, they've probably heard of RISR to some degree. Love to hear your path into the business, and then really want to get to the heart of, for everybody listening, how do you talk to business owners about financial planning? How do you get their attention without feeling like you all of a sudden have to brand yourself as like, I'm this established business owner expert, which means I've sold and bought multiple businesses. I think there's a lot of fear and head trash around like, what does it take to serve a business owner? So I'd love to hit that head on.
Yeah, there's a lot tied up in there. So I'll maybe make a couple quick comments on how the heck I ended up here and doing this, and then talk a little bit about the latter there, which is how advisors can kind of get over their own fears to serving business owners. And so I started my career as an advisor. I started with a great firm here in Philadelphia. I sit outside of Philadelphia, and I started my career with a really storied firm here in Philadelphia that did financial planning, investment management, insurance planning, almost exclusively with business owners. And so I had a front row seat, right at the start of my career, to what great advice to business owners looked like. I wasn't very good at it myself, and so I got yanked into management pretty early on, and so I spent a bunch of years as a managing director with that firm, and I learned a ton. I mean, I had such a wonderful experience with that firm, but ultimately knew that I wanted to do some different things, and so from there, ultimately ran and was the president of a leading wealth tech firm that we kind of pioneered valuation services for business owners, and then ultimately we sold that business and we launched RISR in January of 2024. And so our whole kind of thesis and belief was that business owners desperately need better advice, and that the advisors that serve them need better tools and technology.
Yeah.
we saw that from a financial advice perspective, advisors were constantly put in this difficult position of having to treat the business, the privately held company of the owner, like every other asset on their balance sheet.
Mhm.
Meaning, if I'm an advisor and I'm sitting across from you, Sten, who owns a business, and I'm doing some fact finding, I'm going to ask you questions like, current income, what's your house worth, what's in the 401k, what's in the brokerage, what's your business worth. And again, I treat it like a line item or like every other asset on the balance sheet. And there's two reasons that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Number one, you care a heck of a lot more about your business than you do your holdings in Meta or Google or whatever.
Sure.
And number two, from a concentration perspective, it is always one of the larger assets in your portfolio as the owner of a business, right? As you're building and scaling that business, and so it deserves more love than that in our view. And so that's what we set out to solve. We wanted to create and build a platform that helps advisors give better advice to business owners, and there was a bunch of problems wrapped up in there that we had to solve that we can talk about. And one of them is kind of the last thing you asked about, which is why do advisors get so freaked out about this client segment? And because in our view, business owners are craving your advice, and you as an advisor are great at giving advice. You have all the tools that you need, meaning from a planning perspective, to give great advice. A lot of times advisors, get in their own way. And there's a confidence and a competence problem sometimes and things like that. But
Yeah.
um ultimately, in our platform, we want to launch you into planning related conversations that you want to be having. So when we think about what makes it into the user experience, into the reports, and all these things, it has to hit on two things, which is the owner's got to care about it, and two, the advisor has to want to talk about it. And so it's
Right.
all written from the lens of financial advice, which makes it easy and approachable. And it gives an advisor, who has deep 20, 30, 40 years of deep planning expertise with business owners enough meat to go deliver better advice. And it
Yeah.
also gives an advisor early on in the journey confidence in guardrails and a process to go through.
I think of like as my progression with my practice of working with business owners, I don't think I was prepared for the amount of pushback I would receive. And I don't think it was in like they're difficult to work with, but I think if you own a business and you're used to dealing with people, you don't just acquiesce as quickly as maybe somebody I worked at a company for 30 years. I have a 401k. I don't even know enough to ask the right questions. And
Yeah.
so I do feel like in my experience, business owners, like I have to be willing to step into something else. Like when I enter that conference room, that arena with this client, it's like the likelihood of hard conversations happening or that person getting frustrated and me having to like push back and hold a boundary on something like is dramatically higher than what it was when I had retiree clients that didn't have whatever that tenacity was as much. What's your experience been like with that?
Yeah, look, I think there is no doubt that the stakes are higher.
Yeah.
So one, the stakes are higher. Two, I think there's probably some interpersonal dynamics there at play, which you're hitting on, which is the DNA of owners, operators, people that run a business is different than someone that's going to start at IBM, work for 30 years, and sail off into the sunset and retire. So I think there's no doubt about that. I think there's a great old adage in your world that you're paid for the size of the problems that you solve. And I think that's
Hmm.
exactly right, which is if you want to step into that arena, stakes are higher, there's far more complexity,
Hmm.
conversations are going to be harder, you're going to be held to a higher standard. All of those things are definitely true.
Yeah.
Um, and your pay, for the side, your pay for solving those problems will be commensurate with the challenges that you face. And so
Sure.
um, I think it's a fair point.
Yeah. I think for everybody listening, I've learned this is an underserved market. There are probably some groups out there that are doing it at a high level and have been. My experience now coaching and speaking to thousands of advisors is this is a market a lot of people avoid. Or to your point, it's kind of lumped into their overall planning. But I know as we've built softwares and we've tried to like really dial in our planning process, I realized I could not shove the business into these other categories like I was trying to, and eventually it became its own category. And so, how have you, as kind of building RISR, like describe the category of this business in a way where it's like it is so clearly its own thing, that you can't sprinkle it in.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that the game on the field is changing. AI is both, presents companies like us with incredible opportunity, and is also incredibly scary in some ways. But you ask a great question. So, you know, um, people ask us all the time, be it, customers or investors or enterprises or other stakeholders, whatever it might be, they'll say, like, well, financial planning software exists and has existed for a long, long time. Like, why don't they, or why can't they handle this? Or, questions that look and sound like that. And it's a logical question, because certainly if I'm doing all of my financial planning in a, name the tool, eMoney, Right Capital, Money Get Pro, whatever it is, could they build this? Of course they could.
Mhm.
Why don't they build this? I think, one thing that, and I'm not intelligent enough on this, but I think we hear this from the market quite a bit, which is, these financial planning tools have, are incredible tools in technology. They have built an incredible kind of market that you've seen a bunch of vertical software providers show up in and around as well. But
Mhm.
they've gotten big and they've gotten robust, and so they've gone from like front office, like I'm doing this in collaboration in the meeting with the client, to really back office planning technology, because
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
fair.
gotten so big and cumbersome. I think that creates an opportunity to some degree, like, and look at the adjacent markets. So whether it's estate planning technology, whether it's tax planning technology, whether
Mhm.
it's, business planning technology, you find these slices where you see companies like us pop up to solve a problem. And if the problem, gets big enough and is big enough, you can kind of justify your place on the map, if you will. So if you
Sure.
you look at Kitsis's map, I don't know if you go back 5 years, was it half the size or a quarter of the size? It feels like that's true.
Yeah.
I think that, people are pounding on the table screaming it's too much now. I think that in 2 years or 5 years, it will just be a further explosion. I mean, the cost
Mm.
of starting a company and building technology is driving down dramatically. And so that will
Yeah.
result in more. And so I say all of that to say, we think of our little corner of the universe as kind of business planning,
Mm.
financial planning, financial advice for business owners. And the timing matters, because you made a point, which is exactly right, which is for a long time, people could kind of just ignore the segment altogether, or they
Mhm.
could serve the business owner and just kind of plug in the number and give quality advice or whatever. The demographics are such that that's no longer an option. The reality is more and more of, walk up and down Main Street in Franklin, Tennessee, and there
Mhm.
are no shortage of great private businesses and companies that you as an advisor would love to serve. And so they are all transitioning and transacting, right? The demographics I mentioned, we've got,
Yeah.
12,000 people a day turning 65. Some 20% of those own businesses. You
Mhm.
can't ignore them. And for an industry that loves to talk about and think about organic growth,
Yeah.
no better place to turn, right? There's no other place where you can, have a client that, is a profitable, wonderful client while they operate the business. And then boom, the next day they've got 5, 10, 50, 150 million liquid because
Mhm.
they sold a business. And so from an organic growth perspective, you can't not pay attention.
I think the risk that maybe most advisors are not, I think they're assuming I've been a good advisor to them to this point. So of course I get that money when it comes. And I think what I've experienced in entering these relationships as the new advisor that's bringing a new conversation is they're pretty susceptible around that conversation and life event. If you are a traditional advisor that has mainly been paid by selling insurance, managing investments, I think there's the way we hope they view us and there's the way they actually view us, which is like, oh, this person's been great. They've helped us out a lot, but oh no, now I'm going into a new season and I need somebody different. And I don't think most advisors are seeing it that way. I don't know if we just think the loyalty should be more and we've known them for 20 years.
I think that that's a great point. I think that risk is real. I think that every financial advisor on the planet has uttered the words, I'm the quarterback of all of your financial affairs. And the difference lies in those that actually do that and those that don't. So specifically in the business owner marketplace, meaning again, stakes are higher, complexities are higher, all of those things are true. So if you are playing quarterback and you're pulling together the attorney and the CPA and now, the investment banker, whoever it is, and you are advocating, for the owner in all of these different areas and opening up that dialogue and sitting at the table,
Hmm.
you win. They call you at the end of the transaction and they say, "Where do I wire the money?" They don't say, "Hey, you've got a seat at the table, come pitch your investment philosophy."
Yeah.
But I think to your point, if you are just betting on loyalty because they've been a client for a long time, you might be in trouble. Now, you might not be.
Yeah.
Again, it depends how deep and good the relationship is, and to your point, how they view you and all those things. So, I don't say it. I don't do it. I don't view it or say it as like a scare
Hmm.
tactic. But I do think
Sure.
that the best advisors
Yeah.
actually make good on that promise of quarterbacking all of kind of the affairs for the business owner, especially at this really important time.
Yeah, I do think at a minimum you have to be aware that other people may enter the conversation. Like the banker has a buddy, or the investment banker has an
100%.
investment arm. Like, and so if you think you're fully protected because you've taken the person to steak dinner 5 times over the last 10 years, like I think there's an element of like within the lifespan or life cycle of any client, there are probably a few times where you need to like step up. Like you need to a surge in service, a surge in hey, let's reset. Where are we? And there's been some times where I got comfortable with clients, and I'm like, based on their feedback, and like, man, our service model is great. And then I realized like it's been pretty predictable, but now they're nearing retirement. They're about to sell a business. Like it probably justifies a hey, it's time to sit down and reevaluate to where they feel the service model shift slightly versus it's kind of the same old thing. So I'm curious, and I'd love imagining you were in a room with the advisors listening and you were coaching them on how do you get into this. My mind is going to like there are kind of levels of it or versions. The firm you worked at probably honestly could say this is what we specialize in because they had done it for a long time. I would caution anybody on the call that hasn't been in this market to all of a sudden tomorrow say you're like a business specialist, like because it's just not true. So if we were to say there's a step one, is step one just start having the conversation, like start bringing up the business as a separate asset class? Like what would that look like to kind of move in this direction?
Yeah, look, I think this is a great conversation. So most advisors have business owner clients
Hmm.
by accident versus on purpose or with intention. And so I think that there is again, there are certainly business owners in your book of business, but one good litmus test is like if you were to say, what's my next client look like? Is that a business owner or is it not? Right. So to the extent you want it to be, the best in this space have a really tight understanding of their ideal client profile. And that's typically like a software, you know, industrial complex term. We talk
Yeah.
about ICP and ideal client profiles all the time. I think from in financial services, people are talking about it more. There's different words for it, but let's use ICP for a second. So the best have a clearly defined ICP. And I go through this exercise all the time, when we're talking to large groups and advisors. And like if I put on screen here, Sten, and I said, I had two, taglines of websites that said, one said, I serve business owners, and one said, I serve auto dealers in the tri-state area. And I
Hmm.
said, which one's better? Every single advisor would say, oh, the one that says I serve auto dealers in the tri-state area is better. But
Sure.
then if I went to and I had 1,000 people in the room, if I went to all 1,000 of their websites, they would all say, we serve business owners in financial planning, investment management, succession plan. Like it's all blah, 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 blah. They all say
Sure.
the same stuff.
Yeah.
And so the very best have a crystal clear understanding of who their ideal client is, and then they go play in traffic where those people are. So it's mixing it up with the centers of influence that are in and around that space. It's the association, it's the accountants, it's the attorneys, it's the investment bankers that have
Mm.
relationships in and around this space, and
Yeah.
that they start to become known as Sten Morgan is the best financial advisor if you are an auto dealer. Period. End of story.
Yeah.
And very few people go through that exercise, so again, step one is like, who do you serve?
Yeah.
Number two is start playing in traffic and building relationships. I think, there has been, data is interesting. There's been an explosion of technology companies that are helping advisors, you know, find data, target people, AI automate campaign, all of these things. And I think that's really interesting. I think that the challenge is, especially in this space, the stakes, you made the point earlier. The stakes are higher, complexity is higher. It is going to be really hard to break in with an AI email campaign because you have great data. You have got to build deep trust with people that have trust with these people. You have got to, it's like, the next question people often ask is like, all right, well, how do I go get the next business owner client? And people don't like the answer that we give. And I'm dying for a better one,
Sure.
or a faster one or an easier one.
Yeah.
Be better for us. But the answer oftentimes is like, go spend 6 or 12, like go define the ICP, go spend
Mhm.
6 to 12 months building deep relationships with centers of influence in and around the space,
Yeah.
and get one, and then get the next and the next and the next. And so it's an incredible, like the business you're in writ large, this market too is like, it's an incredible get rich slow business.
That's fair. So I do think, in my experience, there was this, like, when you said a lot of people have business owners by accident, fully like that was me. And I remember when I started trying to build a process to better serve business owners, I was like, oh, Mike, Jan, Susan, I was like, they should probably experience this first because they've been around us already, as opposed to like, I'm going to go give it to the next person. So for everybody listening, I would challenge you to, what does it look like to have a different kind of conversation? Like, what if you even said, hey, it's time we have a meeting where we just talk about your business, and you don't lump it in with the whole investment conversation? You're like, for the next 45 minutes, we are here on this whiteboard, and I want to understand your business. What are your fears? What are you most excited about? And we'll talk about other stuff in another meeting. But I think it's enough to just say, we're going to have a concentrated, focused conversation on this one asset of yours. Do you think there's enough common needs with business owners that you don't have to be the financial planner to auto dealers? Can you say, I may not go out to the marketplace and say, I am the business person, but I am equipped at any moment that when a business owner finds its way in my sphere through referral or natural market, to serve them even better? And I think, as we've talked in the past, RISR came to me, appeared like the thing that could start that conversation in a way of like a process. So if there's an advisor that's like, Jason, I'm not going to become the advisor to the stars and all business owners overnight. I might move in that direction, but what does it look like to, as quickly as possible, have some type of conversation or process in place to where a business owner would perceive me as different than most average advisors?
Look, I think you just nailed it, which is, you went through the example of going to your existing clients and saying, I want to have a different conversation. I want to better understand this asset. And again, it's our view that the best advisors ask the best questions. And so just, you don't need a whole lot. It's like wind them up and let them go. Meaning you ask 2 or 3 pointed questions to a business owner about their business, and that's the hour-long meeting.
Yeah.
So I think that's one wonderful advice. And two, yeah, you're right on, which is, our platform allows you to gain clarity into the asset. So meaning far better understanding of the financials of the business, but two, and perhaps more importantly, is, the operations of the business. So we'll help you better understand the risks that they face, be it in their documents or in how they operate, i.e., owner dependency, customer concentration risk, vendor diversity risk, on and on and on. So once you better understand the asset, and again, what a wonderful use of technology to make that seamless and frictionless, rather than having to gather all that data on your own.
Yeah.
Once you have a better understanding of the asset, you can give all of these high value insights back to the owner under the umbrella and under the context of financial advice and financial planning. So think about valuation, think about wealth. And when we say wealth, that's, how does this asset fit into your overall retirement plan, financial plan, legacy plan? Risk management. So what's the operational risk in the business? What's the document risk? What is the equity at risk? That is the biggest thing that like we love to pound the table on, which is all of these business owners are walking around all day, all around us, with tremendous equity at risk, meaning they've built these valuable businesses and they haven't protected it. And their documents tell that story. And so our platform allows you to, we review, analyze, and summarize those documents in our technology.
Nice.
And then most importantly, succession and exit planning, which is to say, again, back to the demographics, all of these owners are thinking about transitioning and transacting. We're going to see a tidal wave, that has started today and over the last couple of years and will continue over the next decade. And most owners aren't happy with the outcome. And they're not happy with the outcome because nobody's sitting across the table from them, grabbing them by the collar, shaking them and saying, "What do you want?
Mhm.
What do you want?" Because once I understand what you want, we can align the outcome to those goals and objectives. But most don't do that.
Yeah.
The owner's not going to do it on their own, and Sands an advisor sitting across a financial advisor because the lawyer's not going to do it, the accountant's not going to do it, and the investment banker's not going to do it.
Yeah.
So without a financial advisor doing it, it doesn't happen.
Yeah. We talked in the past about RISR, and I remember when I looked at my team, I was like, man, I don't have the capacity to use a new tool to the degree I want to. And so as I've built the team up and we have more capacity, I'm now thinking like who on my team could help own the implementation of something new. I do think everyone listening right now can initiate a specific conversation with every business owner client. Like that, maybe you tier them somehow. They're a certain tier and you're like, for everybody over this tier, I'm going to have a meeting in the next 2 months with them about their business. It is pretty great though, after that meeting, when you set the table, to come to them and say, hey, I'm going to send you a link and I need you to answer some questions. Immediately it's like, oh, you've done this before. There's technology behind your process. It's not just meetings. And then that tees up really focused conversations when you have that output. And so I know the way we're thinking about it right now as a team, I'm like, who on our team could own the business owner analysis, which can't be internal. We're not experts on this overnight, just to look at it. Technology has to be involved, but I'm like, that's a 3-step process to where your business owner client is like, oh, we've never had this kind of meeting before. Oh, what's the software we're using to analyze it? Oh, you have very specific insights that make you appear like an expert faster than you could on your own. And so that's kind of where we're circling around. What's your advice into that quick process?
Yeah, I think that's right on. I mean, I think, look, education is another route you can go. So there's all sorts of designations, that you can explore. I mean, I am always an advocate for education in that regard, or specialization. It's our view that you don't need it, meaning like, again, there's no downside to it other than time and money, but that it's a worthwhile investment from that perspective. But like, you do not have to reinvent yourself as an advisor to start doing this. And so, adding tools and technology that allow you to become a better advisor that solve problems on your behalf. I mean, look, we're seeing the explosion of AI show up in all sorts of tools and technology, and I think it's a wonderful thing. I think people get pretty hot and bothered on one hand, or too excited and chasing shiny pennies on the other about AI. Like, I challenge you to think about it like, what is the job it can do for me? What are the jobs that I like?
Yeah.
What are the jobs to be done that AI can like? So anything related to data capture, like
Yeah.
you should be fighting and scratching and clawing as an advisor to find all the tools and technology that can eliminate any friction in data capture.
Uh-huh.
Number one. Number two, how can it allow me or supercharge me to deliver better advice? I mean, I think for a long time there's been conversation in and around the space about fee compression. I don't. I've seen no evidence that it's happened. I see no evidence that it's going to happen. What I do see is business owners specifically are demanding more for what they get, and so maybe that's a you know similar side to the same coin. But you have to be able to deliver more, and we talked about some of these vertical SaaS companies, or
Mhm.
that can allow you to add different slivers of advice or different value props to the advice that you give, and I think that's an interesting way to think about it from an advice perspective.
Yeah. The thing we challenge ourselves with internally is maximum value with extreme efficiency. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know if the client really cares if I will go and get a designation and I shadow a business expert for 10 years. I think it's like, give me the result as quick as possible. And I'm not going to question the process on how you got there. I do think there's levels of this. And so for everybody listening, if you say, no, I want to be an expert in this space, there's probably some designations on there. There's probably a whole process reset internally. I'm building my practice to serve business owners, not retirees. But for everybody listening, there's something, to your point of not reinventing yourself, that you can do tomorrow that at least allows a client to perceive you as like they know what they're doing in this space. You may not hold yourself out as the expert in the country on this one thing, but I don't know if that's what they're asking you to be. Like, I need you to be aware of the landscape, know what's going on, because you can go find experts in a lot of stuff. I think for a business owner, though, for you to use the word quarterback, I think the expectation is higher for them to actually see you in that, as opposed to maybe what we have to do for everybody else.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And look, I think like anything in life, action. Like, take a step today and a step tomorrow. You can crawl, walk, run into this thing. You're not going to be an expert overnight, but you all know better than anyone, compounding is the eighth wonder of the world. And so, you start taking action today, and over time it builds, and before you know it, every time you add a new client, like, and you top grade, we used to talk about top grading your business. Like, how do I make my next client look far more like my best client than my worst client, right? So
Sure.
every new client I add, I want them to look like this, right?
Yep.
A business owner that owns an auto dealership that's 10 million plus in revenue, or whatever it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, that's what your whole book of business becomes.
Yep.
But it doesn't happen by standing at the starting line saying like, well, I'm not an expert, or how am I going to become an expert? It's like, no, just take the first action, and then the next action, and then the next.
That's good. So as we wrap up, give us the kind of high level on RISR. People listening, they're probably going to look it up. Who's Jason? What's RISR? What's the best way for them to get a clear understanding of what the tool does and how they would use it?
Yeah, our website does a great job. So RISR.com, there's no E, RISR.com. Certainly you can find us on the website, on LinkedIn and other places. But it'll give you a good understanding of who we are and what we do. And it's a good place to start.
Good deal. Jason, appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, Sten, this was awesome. And we're huge fans of you and what you've built. So we appreciate you having us on.
Thanks, man. Talk soon.